Welcome to the Combative Nerds Podcast. Join us while we break balls and try to outwit each other at every turn while debating all things nerdom and trying to make sense of this world. Look, I'm not gonna lie, this is a Herculean task and I'm not sure we have enough brain power to do so. At the very least, we can laugh and offend each other through the process. Thanks for sharing your day with us. Now on to our show. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Raiderlance and
IceyEyedGnome.
It is October 1st, and we got together because we want to discuss She-Hulk Attorney at Law, episodes 4 through 6. Technically not doing A-side, B-side today. We got some other stuff to do. We got a team meeting after this, so we're just coming together to bring you this one episode. Please do us the favor, like, subscribe, comment, share this podcast. Now that we're on multiple directories, we're on YouTube, wherever you're on, please do us the favor. Like, subscribe, comment. We need your feedback. We're getting a little bit. We're making some adjustments. IEG is slaving away to do a new logo for us. It's not going to be as good as anime, but he's putting his skills to work, and and we got to know if what we're doing is working or if it's turning you guys off to us. IEG, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. And just to kind of play off what you said, I'd love to hear some feedback. If there's particular things that you like about the episodes, something you want to hear specifically, something you want to see, please, let us know. Like, subscribe, share. Just give us some feedback. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking at how amazing technology is that we're actually video chatting right now, and I get to see the real you. I mean, it might be not poor internet connection, and when I say the real you, I need people to understand. I've known IEG for two and a half years, maybe a little bit longer than that. Never met in person. Yeah, 3. Okay. Never met in person. But he sent me a number of pictures of all his travels and all his projects. And the amount of Instagram filters this man uses on all of his selfies is, I gotta make some comparables. I told him once that I'm calling him my catfish friend. I told him that when we meet in person, I am not sure I'll be able to pick him out from the bar. Because, all right, let me try to explain it this way. Instagram filters are to IEG selfies are what potholes are to the South Carolinian highway system. I mean, we're talking that level of filters here. And so I just truly thank you for being brave enough to come on this show with me and, show me the real you. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You realize I'm still like a foot taller than you, and I could totally kick your ass. I don't care how much Brazilian jiu-jitsu you know. Like 230 pounds IEG is going to knock you out.
Hulk smashing me. It'd be worth it. I'd be laughing the whole time because I know what you deserve. You guys, if you could just see how many times he had to breathe and hold his breath to let me get all of that out. I appreciate that, man. That was a long one, but and that was multiple in there. So God bless you. You got the patience of Mother Teresa. All right. Well,
that's all right.
Let's transition to She-Hulk episodes 4 or 5. Let's just go through what happened in the episodes and see where the conversation takes us.
All right. So episode 4 was the episode where Wong makes an appearance.
Yes.
Because there's like another magician, Donnie Blaze. Not Johnny Blaze, but Donnie Blaze.
Why did they do that? Is there any reason for it? Is it a hint?
What's funny is like in the trailers, they showed like a poster of what looked like Johnny Blaze, which is Ghost Rider, right?
Of course.
But like you couldn't make it out because the D and the J kind of looked similar, and it was just kind of a quick little, shot. So when they introduced this character and he said his name was Donnie Blaze, everybody was like, "Oh, what the hell?"
Yep.
But he's a Las Vegas magician who's doing like cheap parlor tricks. Who got a sling ring because he was training the same way that Doctor Strange had done, but he gave up and he stole the sling ring. Brought it back, started his own magic show where he could open up portals because that's the only real magic he had learned.
Right.
And so he's just making money off of it, trying to profit from it, but he was causing some harm. And my wife's favorite character in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, no. Okay.
was in this episode. And so now, like from that episode.
Please tell me it wasn't with the girl with the drinks. Who became
Yes.
Wong's
Yeah.
bestie.
Yeah. Madison.
Oh, Jesus. My
Madison,
God.
2 N's, 1 Y, but it's not where
Oh.
you think. Like,
Oh
that
my
is now
God.
my wife's favorite MCU character ever.
I am so sorry, sir.
I've never seen so much joy in my wife's face.
The twinkle
Like-
in her eye that you saw coming off of the
Yeah.
screen.
She was more like impressed and just like elated to see Madison with 2 N's and 1 Y than she was like
Oh.
when we were at the altar. I'm pretty sure. So
Oh, jeez.
she was ecstatic. She was laughing so hard, but that was funny. Like I had no idea that was coming. But yeah, so that was like a really cool episode. From a lawyer's perspective, they talk a lot about trademarks and not trademarks, but they talk a little bit about like, is this real magic? Are you stealing magic? Are you doing harm? That kind of stuff.
Right.
So they had that whole courtroom scene, which was pretty sweet. I like the fact that they're still trying to, even though She-Hulk is like much bigger than an attorney, I like the fact that they're trying to keep the show centered around her and her, duties as an attorney.
Right.
So do you have any input about that particular episode?
So the episode in general, first, a little fun fact that I'm pretty sure that's what they were doing with it. So the place where Donnie Blaze was practicing, it was called the Mystic Castle. And for anybody who's not from the US or California, there's something called the Magic Castle. And what the Magic Castle is located in the Hollywood district. And essentially it is a private clubhouse, venue, performance area, dining room / bar, where all the hit magicians hang out, do their trade secrets, private shows. And the reason why I know about this is, one, you can Google it. But two, I first heard about it is I got a buddy who's a jazz player, and he has friends who's also performed, and he's been invited to the Magic Castle. And it's kind of trying to be like the Disney Club 33 vibe, where it's hard to get in, secret password, you don't know how to get in there. So I'm pretty sure they're kind of doing a reference to it. Interesting, they didn't just say Magic Castle. That was probably trademarked, so they didn't want to pay for the trademark, which is interesting on this show. So it's kind of something I think I caught. I could be far off. I did a little research, and I couldn't see any more correlations other than the name and hinting at it. So from the trademark perspective, for those who don't know, in at least the California bar, to be a patent and trademark attorney, you have to take a higher level bar. So I took it a long time ago, but in general, you're going to cover around 14 general subjects: torts, contracts, civil procedure, California specific, professional responsibility, California specific stuff like, I want to say, community property. And there's probably some other ones, wills and trust. I forget, it's been so long. But you don't cover patent and trademark law. That is a subspecialty onto its own that you have to take another test to get licensed. And the reason I found out about that is one of my classmates was an astrophysicist who decided to get a second career. And interestingly, you can take the trademark and patent attorney bar before you take the regular bar. So while he was in school, he passed a patent and trademark attorney bar and then had to wait 1.5 years to pass the regular bar. So my point is, you got to be that smart or in that field. So I don't know much about it. Long-winded way to say I really don't know jack about it.
That's impressive.
Yeah, that there was one aspect that most attorneys are going to understand, and that was when she was doing the mini consult with Wong, and he was making his claims and that this person devoted themselves to the mystic arts, and she instantly went lawyer mode and went, all right, does he have an NDA, non-disclosure agreement? And then she went, did you have a contract? Did you have it in writing? And from a lawyer's perspective, you could be taken two ways. One, that should just be literal on following the letter of the law and how the court would analyze it under the American legal system. But two, I took it from an interpersonal perspective of technically to friends, to colleagues, to acquaintances, however you want to talk about it. And it's an interesting dynamic that a lawyer has to deal with in their personal life. Now, I'll give you a story. Well, let me make my claim and then I'll give you a story. The claim is, when friends come to lawyers to ask for advice, it always goes south. And the reason why is you want my legal opinion, but you're going to judge me as your friend when you hear it. And it goes south real quick. So in the situation, I knew a person, friend, buddy, acquaintance, however you want to put it. And he was looking into estate planning. I did that for a couple of years, meaning set up a will, trust, yada, yada, yada. It was an interracial marriage. The wife's side didn't take a liking to him. He felt it was on racial grounds. It's probably because he was a bit of a dick, more likely. But let's just say it was racial. Well, he's one of my friends, right? Oh, sorry. Not excluding you, IG. But not Fighter Wizard. And so he came to me and said, all right, well, I'm the breadwinner. If I'm gone, I don't want her family to get it. And I went, no, I completely understand. I said, there's certain things you can do. And he said, what? And I said, well, you are completely entitled to assign your 50% of your community property and all of your separate property to whoever you want to be and exclude them. And he went, my 50%? California is a community property. Every dollar you make or every debt you make during the marriage is 50% each of the spouses, right? I know it's different in different states, but we're a community property state. And so every dollar he's making, 50% of those dollars are his, 50% of those dollars are hers. And so when I told him, then he said, hey, well, what do you mean 50%? What about my wife's? And I went, well, your wife can do whatever she wants with her 50% of the property. Huge wedge in the friendship right there. Never really recovered after that. And he never talked about that situation with me. So what I've now started doing is when people I know, friends, ask me for legal advice, I do a couple things. One, I always, if it's bad news, I always tell them, okay, this is bad news. I don't want to tell you. I want you to get mad at me. I used a friend approach. No, I want to hear it. I said, no, it's not worth it, man. I don't want to share bad news with a buddy. No, I want to hear it. I said, okay, are you asking me as your friend or as an attorney? Because as an attorney, I'm going to say stuff that I wouldn't say as a friend. And then you get that your friend's buy-in and just like, okay, I'll take the chin, and they can compartmentalize it. So it's this weird little dance you got to do as an attorney from my experience, probably because I'm too blunt. And I saw her not do that and Wong be pissy because he judged her like, oh, you don't appreciate the ramifications of this. And she should have went, asshole, you asked me as an attorney. You didn't ask me as She-Hulk. I'll come fight demons with you as She-Hulk. But you asked me as an attorney. So it's this weird dance I see. Sorry to rant so long.
No, you're fine. Yeah, so, I get that. And just as a friend or whatever, I think I've asked you some, for not for my account, but, for some legal advice and stuff, and just general advice. And, I can separate. And generally when I do that, I kind of know you're probably not going to agree with me. I've had a conversation with you about this before. If I ever ask you about something, it's because I want a genuine opinion, and I'm preparing myself that it's going to be bad news from you. So,
oh yeah. I think your exact words were, "You're an honest asshole," so that's why I asked you questions.
Yeah, exactly. That's 100% true. I know that you're going to be blunt, even if it hurts my delicate sensibilities. So I appreciate it.
You got thick skin. Yeah. So, okay. Was this the episode where she went on a bunch of bad dates?
Yes. So she creates a profile, and she starts dating as at first as herself, as Jen, and the dates are uninteresting. One of her dates stiffs her with the bill, and
hilarious.
He's
that was great.
Yeah, he's like, I'm a New Yorker, and she's like, oh, how long did you live in New York? And he was 14 months.
Yeah,
and she was like, oh, and then he was like, yeah, and then he was like, I really identify as a New Yorker, and I lived there for 14 months, and then he said something about he felt really oppressed or whatever by his boss, and he became an entrepreneur. And she's like, what do you do? And he was like, TBD.
Yep.
I was like,
yep, TBD announced.
It was a dude. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, she went on numerous dates with people who were just not interested in her at all, and didn't ask her questions, didn't seem interested. It was it was tragic. It really was. And I think one of her friends actually makes a comment about how, heterosexual dating is tragic. And, but I, from what I understand and what I know with my friends and that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter what sexuality you are, it's tragic across the board. Dating sucks.
I cry for my children in this new dating atmosphere of swiping and having no interpersonal skills. It has de-evolved the human interactions at a tremendous and shocking rate that you can boil down somebody into a profile with limited amount of characters and their experiences and their pain and their love and their openness. But to me, that is more of a commentary, kind of like it was on this episode, that I have a saying I say to my wife, and it sounds ridiculous, but we have updated our software as humans faster than we've updated our hardware. And what that means is, the last 200 years, we are nothing like the humans that were walking this planet 200 years ago. You want to go back 400 years, there's an argument they weren't even human. But I heard somebody say this once, and they said, if you were to have a child and you were to open up a portal and drop them off in the Nordic area with the Vikings, you're going to assume that kid's not going to be just as good as a Viking because it was born in 2020? And it's this, we have fooled ourselves to thinking that we're still not those people. That is our hardware. That is the way the brain is set up. That is why the human psyche is set up. Look, at the end of the day, I'm 5'6". You know how hard it's going to be to marry a woman that's 5'10"? Why? Because the basic primal understanding of a woman wanting protection, security, provider, and for millennia, those have been the largest, strongest men. You can't extricate that from humans. Plain and simple. And we have fooled ourselves into thinking we can. And we have done such a good job at fooling ourselves. You get that guy who thought he lived in New York and was a New Yorker. You got that type of male. That wasn't a manly guy. That was a metro guy who was unkept. But at the same instance, here's where I found this interesting dichotomy where I was like, man, all these bad dates, really? They're all bad guys? You're the good one here, Jen? But the way I took it from male perspective is it was the guy's job to pay, right? That was going to show whether he was a good guy or not, whether he was going to pay. So she did it out of obligation, but she's not supposed to pay. It's ridiculous. So in the same time, you're still playing into those old human interactions with the male. If this was a huge, I'm She-Hulk, I'm in power, I'm a prominent woman, I'm going to put my card out. I know I make more than you. None of that. She still wanted the guy to take care of her in that watered down sense. So this was one of the instances where I looked at a situation I disliked both people. Does that make sense? I thought she looked just as bad in those dates as the guys did. Now, we got the female flavor just kind of like in 50-Year-Old Virgin when they did the speed dating. You had all those crazy chicks. Like, to me, both sides gets to make their arguments. That I'm cool with that. I don't care with all these guys being jerks. But let's see which one she chose. The tall, dark, good-looking doctor. Huh. Really? You want people to see the worst side of you, the non-special side of you, you want to be listened and heard to, but the only dude is going to be top shelf, what they got, high value man? That's the only good selection out there? The hypocrisy is a little thick. So, sorry I'm ranting.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, out of the dates that we saw, right? Like the ones that they presented to us, clearly he was the favorable choice. Not only did he have like a job and a career, but he seemed interested in her. He made a comment at the very beginning of the date about how he was tired of going on dates and talking about himself. He wanted to hear more about her.
Right.
And so that like kicked into her brain, like, oh, he's interested in me. He wants to know more about me. Whereas the plethora of other men that I've been on these dates with only wanted to talk about themselves and what they've done, talk about their accomplishments and that kind of stuff. So this is like the first guy who showed any real interest in who I am or what I am.
Right.
And
he was in.
That was like after she did the She-Hulk thing, though. So let's be very clear about that.
Yes.
All the dates that she went on as Jen sucked.
Yes.
And then the ones that she went on as She-Hulk, they were all interested in her because she was She-Hulk.
Right.
This guy was the only one out of all the dates who was not interested in her as a lawyer, not interested in her as She-Hulk. He just wanted to know more about her. And like, so that was out of all of the introspectives you can make about this, the retrospectives you could take from it. That was like the one date that seemed the best. And yeah, I mean, I understand. He was a pediatrician or a podiatrist or some crap. And like, he was like tall from a typical perspective. I think he was probably like 5'10",
Screw you.
5'11", and like he was dark and like handsome. Yeah, whatever. And he was like, you know, handsome looking. He had nice eyes. He did. He was like me. Like I'm half Italian, so he was like really hairy.
Yep.
And stuff. So like, you know, that's seen as like a manly trait. Sure. But he was like a good looking dude, and he seemed genuinely nice. But as we all have seen at the end of that date, spoiler alert, like when she transformed back into Jen, as she does when she's sleeping, we've already found that out from the first couple of episodes.
Oh, it's a good point. I didn't catch that.
So she transformed back into Jen, and he was like not interested in her anymore because even he, who seemed like a good guy, was still superficially tied to those things about how you look, not who you are.
If we can back up just for a second, I call bullshit on that thing that you pointed out where she wakes up as Jen. Do you know how many times I got woken up to a slap because my wife dreamt that I did something to her? Clearly, she would have woken up the Hulk, at least occasionally. So I don't think it's a every time. But, you know, maybe that's just my marriage. So I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, if she got like slapped, yeah. But I mean, if she was
I was the one who got slapped.
I doubt it. She practices yoga. They talk about that in the first episode or whatever with Bruce. Like, she practices yoga to learn how to control it and calm herself down and center herself. And she has clearly far more control than Banner does. But
yeah. So
when she's asleep, she's at peace and whatever. And that may change. If she has nightmares and stuff, she may wake up as the Hulk. We don't know.
Yeah.
But she does do yoga throughout this. I think she even does yoga in this episode too. So if not this episode, maybe it was 4 or 5 or something.
I don't recall.
Yeah, she does yoga. She practices it throughout the show.
Hey, let me just totally switch gears on you. Oh, no, it was the next episode. Yeah, absolutely. I'll bring it up next time. Okay. Anything else from this episode?
I love the fact that Madison, with 2 N's and 1 Y, calls Wong Wongers. And like, now I can never call him anything else but Wongers. And my wife is like on board with that too. She's, it's Wongers. Like it's now forever Wongers. So thanks to Kevin Feige or whoever drummed up that idea.
This poor guy in this show and Doctor Strange, was it Multiverse of Madness? All he's trying to do is get respect as a Sorcerer Supreme, and this dude just cannot get it. He reminds me of like the Roger Dangerfield of the MCU.
Yeah, old Rodney.
Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, like he's very intelligent. He's very smart or whatever. But it's like it's so fun because he's like such a down to earth kind of guy. So yeah, he wants respect, but you know, it's like Doctor Strange in the very first Doctor Strange movie. He was like, he called him Beyonce, and then like later in that movie, you see him like listening to Beyonce on his headset, like jamming out in the library.
I
like,
love that character.
He's so funny.
I heard a critique.
He's awesome.
I heard a critique that this show kind of undermines Wong, and I was just like, they laid the groundwork from the very first movie that he is the straight man. You know what I mean? Like he's going to keep a straight face while ridiculous stuff is happening. That's what makes his character so amazing. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it. Yeah. As an attorney, I cringe seeing a drunk witness parading around with drinks, but I know I can't help myself from cringing, but I try to take it for the entertainment that it is. And I hated the character.
Yeah, I think it was
absolutely hated that character.
Yeah, well,
before different.
I thought she was awesome, but it was funny, and I thought it added like a really great comedic aspect to the show. One that was like super necessary because you can get lost in some of these topics, you know, without that kind of like breakup, you know, like
sure.
You're talking about dating and that kind of stuff. That's fucking depressing. It's awful, you know, like unless you're lucky enough to find people like we have,
right?
it's awful. It can be an awful experience, and I can't say that every dating experience I've ever had's been fantastic either. So,
Oh, that's an episode.
I think it was kind of like,
sorry, that's an episode we'll never do.
Yeah, truth to form or whatever. Yeah, let's not talk about that. But
well, let's move to episode 5 because we got 5, 6. We're going to try to keep this under an hour. Episode 5. Let me lead in.
Okay.
I got just from the intro before we met the character, I got a very Edna Mole from the Incredibles, from the seamstress, when the two were trying to get She-Hulk an outfit. Am I imagining that?
No, I think that was pretty spot on. I think that's a good analysis.
Yeah, just from the attitude, short-tempered attitude, dismissive attitude, the intercom. Yeah, I was just like, well, and it's Disney and Pixar, right? So why wouldn't they take a little bit of license from it? They could probably do it. So I like that. I like that introduction of the, let's just call them seamstress. And I also was taken aback and thoroughly enjoyed the relationship between the paralegal and the male attorney. I thought that was awesome. How they were like buddies, partners in crime, trying to find the down low person making it. That was probably my most enjoyable part of that whole episode.
What did they call that guy? The drip.
Oh, my drip
guy?
Drip
something. I can't remember. Yeah.
It was awesome.
I was just like, what?
I was taken aback from the way you felt about Party Girl is the way the way your wife felt about the Party Girl witness is the way I felt about the two of those being a comedic duo. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
What did you think about Miss Mallory Book, the attorney? Now, I missed it. I don't know the past relationship. I drew a blank. Clearly, Jen knew her from somewhere. But what is the tension between the two of them?
Well, I don't think it was like past tension. I think it was just like, as an attorney, if you ever needed to hire an attorney, how would you feel? You know what I mean? Like,
oh no,
it was that tension, that level of tension. Well, it was just like, she was a bitch, but she didn't want somebody else who knew the law. It's kind of like being a doctor and coming in and trying to diagnose a patient whose daughter is a nurse at the local clinic, right? And they're trying to like, oh no, you need to do this, and
I understand.
So she came in there and just established authority.
I understand your point. That is the worst bedside manner, to the point where that's intentional. Like, I could never imagine an attorney talking to another attorney that way when getting hired. I literally thought there was some past tension, competition between the two of you, because there's no reason to talk to somebody like that in that type of a situation. Now, from the remainders of the episodes, that's her MO. And also, I'll bleed into episode 6. She actually does have a soft interior, but man, does she have walls up. And so I think they're playing into that. But I'm like, when I saw her come out the gate like that, I was like, Jesus, I thought maybe she worked in the DA office with the other guy that she steamrolled in episode 3.
No, I think it's more of that Napoleon syndrome, right? Like you're representing
I don't know about
a character
that.
who is a Hulk. So, oh yeah, you being 5'6" have no idea.
That didn't land. You had to think about that one. Yeah, no, she was definitely compensating. I have had some colleagues where, whether they have to or whether they decide to, I don't like it, but I get it. Sometimes you gotta, when you're playing with sharks, you gotta become a shark, right? Don't necessarily agree with the outfits she chose to go to trial or go to court in. Not sure that would have been well received, but she's pretty. I'll give that to her. I enjoyed that part of the episode. Let's see. Do you want to get into the Titania lawsuit?
Oh, the relationship or whatever with the trademark of She-Hulk and that kind of stuff. I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was something that like you would have some really good perspective on. I know that you said trademark law is a separate thing, but I think I thought it was really interesting how they kind of talked about it, and they even like displayed Chet or whatever, like her cousin, come in and be like, oh, that's not the way how trademark law works. He's like explaining law to his lawyer cousin, which I thought was hilarious.
To me, that was a callback to the argument where she had with Bruce, where men of lower intelligence were coming and explaining her job, or lower capability was explaining her job to her. And I think that's why I took why she buried her face. So they proved a perfect instance, and that is totally true. I could totally see that happening. From my perspective, again, where I took it and I had to tap out on the episode was not necessarily the way they phrased the trademark or patent law concepts. It was the litigation aspect, which is the motion for summary judgment. So in general, I'll make it real quick. When you do a lawsuit, you file a complaint, somebody does a response, and then you start going to court for either motions or you ask for evidence and you start arguing, and maybe you do some conference meetings or mediation, or depending on the lawsuit. But you don't actually go to trial, but for like 3 or 4 days after 1 or 2 years of you trying to battle it out amongst yourselves. So with motions, usually during, they call it the civil, technically the civil procedure aspect. So not criminal. I am not talking about criminal. But in civil procedure, we have 1 or 2 years where you are fighting it out via paperwork, emails, back and forth. And only when the two parties are not getting along or cannot agree, you will bring these motions. And it's an argument that this should happen in your favor, or they should stop doing this. And so you'll appear in court for like an hour or two, depending on the motion, but that's not going to trial. So this motion for summary judgment was not a trial. It was a hearing for a motion that they made. Now, broad brushes here. In general, a motion for summary judgment is like, okay, let's say you want to sue me for something, IAG. You have any idea? You want to sue me for having a loud mouth, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So you file a lawsuit and say that I shouldn't have a loud mouth. I can go and file a motion for summary judgment, in essence saying, even if what IEG says is 100% correct, I'm not liable for anything. I have freedom of speech. He's not a protected class. I didn't commit libel or slander or defamation. I didn't do all those things. I'm just an asshole. You can't sue me for that. So a motion for summary judgment is saying the other side's argument is 100% correct, and they still can't win the case that they're bringing. So if we look at motion for summary judgment, in this case, what was Titanium was suing Jen because it was trademark infringement. Right? So Jen was no longer allowed to use She-Hulk. Jen's defense was, I've always been She-Hulk. I've used it before you. Well, if the person who brought the motion for summary judgment here was Jen and her counsel. So Jen is saying in a motion for summary judgment, even if everything Titania is saying is true, I still win the lawsuit. Well, what is Titania saying? That She-Hulk is infringing the trademark and that she didn't use it and never made it personal. So you would never make a motion for summary judgment. I'm sorry. All right. Attorneys work on billables. They would still bring that motion. But you would not win that motion for summary judgment because you're agreeing to that person's argument. And Jen's whole defense was, oh, no, I denied it at first, but then I owned it. And here's my dating profile. And here's my news interview. That's where I was like, well done, poorly executed. But that's a harsh technical critique.
Yeah, there was a lot more in the courtroom that episode than there has been in prior episodes. I think that was the most legally directed episode. Yes. They used a lot of like her past experiences in dating and that kind of stuff, like bringing in character witnesses and trying to prove that she had been using the name She-Hulk by using that dating app and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot more in the courtroom in that episode, which I really appreciated. I think it was kind of trying to bring it back to center. It being the 5th out of 9 episodes, I think it was important to establish that that is the heart of the show. It's an attorney show that happens to be about She-Hulk and not a She-Hulk show where she happens to be an attorney. I think that was important, especially with the tie-in potentially later in the season or at the end of this season of Daredevil also being an attorney, making an appearance. We all know it's happening. So I don't know how they're going to tie those two in, but I know it's going to be important in the future, and I'm interested to see where it goes there. But I do appreciate, like I said earlier, that they're trying to keep this kind of centered, where it doesn't veer too far away from the fact that she is an attorney and that she does practice law as a lawyer to superheroes or supervillains or whatever. And I really appreciated this episode.
Yeah. Let's move on to episode 6 so we don't crowd ourselves out from the hour. Episode 6, to me, I don't have much commentary. It was a traditional villain superhero fight, actually on 2 occasions. I liked this because it was more lighthearted and humorous, but I found out that the true evil party in this case was the bridezilla of a friend that she went to high school with. To me, that was the most destructive force that caused the most damage to She-Hulk. Far more than Titanium did. So I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if that was done tongue-in-cheek. But the biggest savage and monster in that show was Bridezilla, in my opinion.
Yeah, so like her friend Lulu, I think, is the one who's having the wedding, invites her. She shows up in one of the costumes, the dress or whatever that was made for her. She looks fantastic, right?
Yep.
And this bride is like so pissed because she comes to the wedding like dressed up as She-Hulk, looking fantastic in this dress, and is just like, you cannot outdo me on my day. And I called it as soon as she was like getting ready to go to the wedding. I looked at my wife and I told her, I was like, I already know what's going to happen. And like I told her, and like 5 seconds later, the bride comes up and Bridezilla's the shit out of the whole thing. And it's like, no, you're not going to do this, whatever. And Titania making the appearance did not like, it didn't shock me at all that she was going to show up and try and like one up Jen.
I never understand why women are, I should say, women, when they're brides, always choose violence. I'm not saying every bride, but this is a through line. There's a reason why this is, the archetype in the story. We've all seen it. They make shows about it. And the whole time I'm like, Jen, let me pull you aside. You're goddamn better than this. I felt like Miss Mallory book. We're like, hey, you don't deserve this. You deserve better. Like, why would you? Okay, walking a dog down the aisle, I think that's cute. I don't see any problem with that. My wife would love to do that. But clearly, you're on iron duty. You're part of the help that you're going to clean up. Why would you subject yourself into just being honest and being like, you're not a good friend. I'm out. I felt bad for her.
Yeah. As soon as somebody put me on cleanup duty at the wedding, I would have been like, oh no, F you. I'm part of, the bridal party. Like, no, that's not happening. Now if Jen had offered to help, that's one thing. But Bridezilla coming up and saying like, hey, I pissed off all the people I hired to do this job. Now I need you to do it. I'd have been like, nope, you better hire somebody else. Like,
and only Jen, right? It wasn't a group effort from all the bridesmaids. Only Jen. Like I've seen, divide and conquer. Hey, these 2 people need to go help this. These other people need to go do this. Stuff needs to get done at weddings. But it was clear that you were the least of them, and they did not have. You weren't part of the group. And I felt bad for her. Not anybody in that situation. It's not right.
I don't know if anybody what people have experience at wedding venues and that kind of stuff, but you usually have a time limit, right?
Sure.
So just from experience, my personal experience, when me and my wife got married a couple of years ago, we had a set number of hours. We were able to extend that a little bit, but we had a set number of hours to get all this stuff taken care of. So towards the end of the wedding, the ceremony and that kind of stuff, everything had ended. Me and her were ready to go to the hotel and get ready for our vacation or whatever, our honeymoon vacation. But her parents and her brother and some of my friends and that kind of stuff were all helping to get this stuff torn apart. And me and her even chipped in to get all this stuff taken care of,
of course.
Shout out to my parents, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law for trying to help get all this stuff sorted. But it was a group effort. We were all chipping in, trying to get all this stuff situated so that we didn't get charged extra money.
Oh yeah.
For running over or leaving a mess.
Yeah. When the few minutes we have left, there's 2 other things. 1, her new potential love interest seems like a good dude. And then 2, spoiler alert, my speculation, clearly rich dude wants to poke Jen with a vibranium needle to draw her blood to make more Hulks. I think that's not too far of a reach. So which do you think, let me pose to you, is going to be more important? Her new love interest or potential love interest, or the fact that someone's trying to jab a 2-gauge needle in her.
So, important thing to know about the last episode that we're reviewing today. Spoiler alert, I've already seen the next episode, so I know. But
Okay.
in this episode that we're referring to, the one at the wedding where she fights Titania and that kind of stuff, her friend Nikki, I think is her name, is already working with Brooke on some other stuff, and they, this other case where they are talking about Mr. Immortal and how he has faked his death to get out of all these relationships and stuff. So they're still talking about courtroom type stuff, but in that they discover the intelligentsia, which is this group of people who just like crap on people, right? Okay. It's basically like Reddit.
Yeah.
And so they discover this intelligentsia group, and they found this page about She-Hulk and all these people making death threats and they're out to get her, and they're out to kill her, and they're out to, do whatever to her. And they're trying to debate on whether or not they should tell She-Hulk about this or not. Whether they should tell Jen that she needs to watch her back. And they're like, Brooke is like, yeah, she's got it. Leave her alone. So the fact that there is a guy who just shows up to a wedding who makes no references in that episode, makes no references to who he knows there.
Okay.
Like what side of the aisle he's from, right? Like he knows the groom, he knows the bride, he's best friends with so-and-so. Nobody calls out to him because they don't know him. They just assume that he's there. So he's like the perfect guy. Like even before I saw the following episode where I found out the truth, I had already suspected this guy is going to be.
I was rooting for her to find out good.
Yeah. So like if you watch any episodes of like any movies in the MCU, and there's always like a good person or somebody you would suspect as being a good person, and they're not immediately in danger. Even if they are in danger, let's like take it back to Iron Man 3, where that girl that he hooked up with like 10 years or whatever before at like a New Year's Eve party is like coming to try and come to his rescue, and they blow his house up, and he saves her and that kind of stuff. She turns out to be like one of the bad guys, but like immediately she was not in danger. So like anytime there's like a love interest or a particular person who's like seems like they would be like a good fit, who's not in just immediate danger, like somebody's out to like kill them, they're going to be like a bad guy. There's like never in the history of Marvel has there ever been like a person that was just like good from the beginning to the very end, including some of the superheroes that we have today.
That's the recipe, huh?
Yeah.
That bums me out. Well, let me use this to transition and revisit the topic of whether or not She-Hulk is a woke show. I had a buddy reach out to me, gave me a comment, which I really appreciated feedback, and said he 100% disagreed with me, that She-Hulk was a very woke show, that I was dismissing the intent and purpose of all the little subtleties that they made. I told him, okay, well, first of all, thank you for disagreeing with me. I'd love to bring this up. Second of all, I am going to take your advice with a grain of salt. And the reason is because you treat DoorDash like it's your private Tinder. So I'm not sure if I should be taking advice about wokeness and females and red pill from you. But I do see your point, sir. And I appreciate it, X. Here's what bothers me. So the guy who I thought was a good guy, she finally found a good guy. If he's a bad guy, they're again going on with this trope of, and I think it's called trope, that there's no good men out there. And I heard this a long time ago. I told you this before we started recording. There was an old joke that 2 single ex-party girls from New York told me. And they said, how are men like parking spaces? All the good ones are taken. And, in hindsight, I should have told them, listen, you reserve lot parking space yourself with some carts in it. You don't get to judge. You're right there in the speed date. You're the counterpart of the 40-year-old virgin speed dating girls. But what I did is I started researching some of these things that my buddy brought up. And if you look at the possible intent of Marvel and this show, I'm kind of changing my opinion. I still think it's within bounds. I still love seeing this perspective. I'm still a huge fan of this show. Let's make this real clear. But instead of saying woke, not woke, I think we should put this show on a sliding scale. On a 1 to 10, how woke is it, and what's an acceptable amount of that perspective? I still think it's acceptable. So it's, under 5. It's still within reasonable, but here's why I think there may be a little bit more malintent. One, when they did the presser to talk about this show, the panel were all females. They cut out Kevin Feige, they cut out all the male actors. Now, one can make the argument that this is a show promoting women, so they wanted to give all the focus on the women. I agree. I don't have a problem with that at all. Second, when the first scene in the first episode where Jen got exposed to Bruce's blood, first, my buddy pointed out that Jen kicked the car door open, but let's say she did that. Now Bruce got his blood on her by accident as opposed to it being intentional. So why did they remove his willingness, his sacrifice, his love for his cousin out of the storyline? And then the third comment was, I got a snippet from the old comic book, and the scene is where Bruce is apologizing to She-Hulk and saying, I'm sorry I did this. I'm sorry I exposed you. I'm sorry I did this to your life. And the comic, I'm going to read it for you. She-Hulk says, I'm a victim no longer. I can fight back as She-Hulk. I'm an aggressive, positive force for good. Cousin, we're not monsters. We got a great gift and the power and the ability to do good. I thought you understood that. Once you were able to control the change. And he says, yeah, I tried. It was very hard, but you don't blame me? And she says, no, I want to thank you. Thank you so much. That was the dynamic they set out in the original comic book. Now, Hulk is kind of a dumb jock who did this by accident, and she's trying to explain to him, no, I got this. I'm better at being a Hulk than you are. So there is a much different intent. So the and the big final nail in the coffin for me is Disney and the MCU is on record saying we're here to have a progressive agenda. We want to find these markets. We want to explore these characters. We want to change this thing. And they've been very vocal about how liberal they are. If you add all that, you build up enough circumstantial evidence to build a case where they probably do have the intent that they want to interject that into the storyline. Is it still acceptable? I think so. I think there's value. I think it's acceptable if we can critique it and we can deconstruct it and expose it so that we can have an honest conversation about it. But I will say that there is some malintent if it's not obvious. In my opinion, it is pretty obvious. They do give the other side, and it's not always at the expense of males. Just sometimes. Okay, my long rant's done. You.
Well, I wanted to touch base on your point about kicking the car door open, which seems like an impossible physical feat. But one, to just offer some perspective, this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe where somebody can have gamma radiation and turn green, right?
I concede.
But two,
good point, Kai. Concede.
There are cases, whatever. I had to look it up because I couldn't remember the exact name. So this is me cheating, but I'm telling you the truth. I heard a story a long time ago about this woman. Her name is Angela Cavallo. You may have heard this story too. But in 1982, her teenage son, she was inside cooking dinner. Her teenage son was working on his car. It was a 64 Impala.
Nice. Respect.
And the jack fell out.
Sorry to hear that.
And the car fell on top of him. And she ran outside, and it's called hysterical strength.
Yes.
And she lifted this 64 Impala 4 inches off the ground, enough that strangers could rush up and put the jack back up under the car and pull him out from under it.
Okay.
And they were able to take him to the hospital, and he fully recovered.
I'm not trying to minimize this, but as a Mexican, I have to ask, are you sure there wasn't hydraulics in that 64 Impala?
In 1982, probably not. I doubt it. I think that was more of an early 90s invention, but I could be wrong.
Okay. I think what's that?
Late 80s, early 90s.
What's that old movie? Not Carrie, but where the car comes alive and kills you? The evil car? Old movie.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah. It was a Stephen King novel.
Yeah.
It was
something.
I can't remember the name of it. You said Carrie. It's not Carrie, but I know what you're talking about.
But that would be my worst nightmare. My dream car coming and killing me because it was evil. So sorry to make light of that joke, but yes, hysterical strength is true. I agree on that point.
Yeah.
But is there enough evidence to show that if we want to infer intent on Marvel, it would be for a more progressive liberal depiction or storytelling?
So there are instances, and like we'll take some prime examples, right? So it was very clear. Marvel and the advertisers made it very clear that Captain Marvel was going to be about the empowerment of women, right?
Yep.
Brie Larson went out on every major talk show talking about how it was supposed to empower women,
Yep.
and that was the entire intent of the entire movie. It was not just about storytelling. It was not about the introduction of this character. It was about the empowerment of women. I'm not faulting that whatsoever. I think it's a great thing. I think that
Sure.
that young girls should feel empowered. I think that men as fathers should teach their daughters to be able to take care of themselves, to be able
Sure.
to defend themselves and look after themselves, right? I think empowerment is a huge thing because you're literally giving the tools to individuals, regardless of whether they're male, female, or whatever their gender identity is and that kind of stuff. Empowerment's a big deal because you're giving them the tools to survive in the world that we live in. However, when you like heist a storyline that has been out there for 30, 40, 50, 60 plus years to make an agenda, like turn it into some political agenda, like you're weaponizing this, beloved franchise, you're doing a disservice to the fans, really. I would think. And you may, you may fight back on this one a little bit, but I think when you try and weaponize a character who gained like some support and some fandom throughout the years with these storylines, and then try and weaponize it into something to make some kind of political agenda out of it, like you're stealing from those people. You're stealing. You're not giving anything to another community by like taking something away from another. It's a transfer of power, transfer of balance.
I agree. I say another good example of that is the X-Men Iceman when they made him gay.
Yeah.
Create a great character with that kind of backstory. Do not transfer over that. I completely agree with you. I think it comes down to the presentation and execution, and there is a demanding, there is a taking away, there is a taking away from one person and passing it to another. I usually say that I do not mind feminist opinions as long as it doesn't come at the expense of men. And that usually ruffles feathers because one of the main goals is at the expense, a payback, a forceful takeover. And one, to me, it sounds like you're going to commit the same crimes and atrocities that you're complaining about. So now you want to be no better. And if you want to be no better, then let's fight it out. But don't try to take the moral ground. Take things by force, but then pretend like you're not doing that. So I don't think She-Hulk is anything like that. I know we're getting a little bit into the weeds here. I still think it's well within bounds. Sure, it has a flavor that I don't like. But again, I would give you the example of like the 40-year-old version, like the red pill conversations. I don't agree with all of them, but a lot of those make sense. And I'm okay with the criticism of women and their traditional values and their modern values, just like I think people should be okay with the criticism of She-Hulk, even though, it's like, you can't find one nice guy. Really? There's no good dudes out there. They're all taken. Problem isn't you. It's all men.
What?
But that's okay. That's her
like
perspective.
I don't mean to interject, but like broad generalizations are like one thing, right? So like it's okay to say that like the dating world sucks, right?
Sure.
Because as someone who was in the dating world, a few years ago, I can say from 100% certainty it sucks. You're going to find people that you just don't, click with, and there's some people who are self-centered, and there's just awful people out there. And I'm not saying I'm a prize either. You know what I mean? Like we all have issues,
right?
But like, it sucks, and it's okay to make a broad generalization, but to like specify that all men or all women are crap, or that all men or all women are bad at something or whatever, that kind of sucks. It is okay to make generalizations in the respect that like typically women do this, or typically men do this, or typically, whatever, ethnicity or whatever you are, they do these things, whatever, because
There's
if they
statistical
become
basis in it.
generalizations, it's because it's statistically there are more men capable to do athletic feats than women on like a greater scale, right? That's not to say that all men are better than all women,
Right.
but statistically speaking,
Most men are better than most women.
yeah, you're going to find more men that can run a mile faster than most women, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going to find men who are able to lift heavier objects vastly more than most women are. That's not saying that they're not, capable, because has anybody ever seen China? I know you have, Raider.
Yeah.
You bought a couple of videos, I think.
So changing subjects. Well, we are pre-editing at around an hour. I know we could go on this all day.
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to try and wrap this up, and you can comment. If you're smart, you won't touch this. But
Okay.
this is a message to Jen. Jen, you deserve a good man, but you're not going to get one putting out on the first night. What the hell is wrong with you thinking you can go on all these dates and then just give it up like that? This is on you. You are no better than any of those guys. What is wrong with you? Your father would be ashamed. All right. That's it for me.
That's probably true. I'm gonna agree. I don't know, as a man, like I don't know how much respect you can really garner from just like getting at it after like a 15-minute conversation over dinner.
Yeah, and
but
let's just be clear. She didn't hide the ball at all. She picked him up and walked him to the room. Like, come on, man.
Yeah,
Show some restraint here. Act like it's his idea. Jesus Christ, rookie.
But to be fair, we don't know what the timing was like, right? They could have had several meaningful conversations over this texting dating app over a period of time. But what it looked like to us was about like 5 minutes at the dinner table, and she was carrying him home like something she picked up from the store. You know what I mean? Like it was just meat on the table.
She didn't have the decency to even clean up first. Like, come on, girl. You're not that desperate.
Oh, that's right. She did. She fought demons. That's right.
Yeah, freshen up a little bit. Jesus Christ.
So like mid-coitus, she just dropped it and went and fought demons, came back covered in slime, and was like, let's get it.
Oh, my God.
I forget about that.
Again, I think another through line, every episode had sex.
Yeah.
So now we know why they got their PG-13 rating or whatever they call it for TV, and why I can't have my kids watch this show. God damn it. I have to actually spend time with them. All right. Any final thoughts? I'm sure we're going to piss some people off. If we did, mission accomplished. Show that banner over my head.
I would like to make one final statement if I can. For me, it is not about like whether a character is like straight or gay or black or white or whatever. It's about sticking to the original storyline. And as far as like sexuality and stuff is concerned, I want to make myself very clear. I don't care. I don't care if you're gay or you're straight. I want to see you fight bad guys, and I want to see you kick their ass. Like that's what I want to see. Even if you're straight or whatever, like I don't want to see you like fall in love and whatever. However, if for 45 years you have loved the same woman, like Lois Lane in Superman, right? Yep. I don't want to see Superman fall in love with like Martian Man and go at it in like an episode of whatever the CW's pumping out these days. So I just want to make it clear that that's like what I mean.
From a minority's perspective, when I heard this commentary, I agreed with it immediately. And it was with a YouTuber. I apologize. I watched this years ago. And I felt like he was talking about one of the Spider-Man characters. Black YouTuber targeting that urban audience. What he was saying is, from his perspective, it is not only lazy, but it's almost disrespectful to grab a character, remix them, and then shell them out to this new community for support. Why not put the time, effort, love, dedication that you can build this universe, this sliver of the universe, and show that much effort? They did it with Black Panther. What a success. It was moving to see how celebrated it was. That was awesome. I don't think you would have had that if you just got a different character, swap the race, swap the religion, swap the storyline. Like it was a true effort by Marvel. And I just think of it as lazy and what do they call it? Lip service. If they don't do it the right way. So I would love for them to explore these. They have, and a lot of them have failed. They have tried to introduce a bunch of, new content, and it's failed. So you can take those data points and apply them, and it's not just because people were bigoted. Do better work, and you'll get rewarded no matter what the storyline is.
I think you're right. I think it's lazy to take a character who has like an established history and just change it to do service to a particular community. I think it's disrespectful to that community, right? But I also think it's just as lazy to underdevelop a character and release it to do the lip service to a particular community. Put the work in. Black Panther, Blade, great black characters, whatever, who have an amazing history with Marvel. I love the movies. I buy their comics.
Luke Cage.
You know what I mean?
That was my favorite.
Luke Cage is awesome.
I'm a Punisher diehard. Luke Cage was my favorite. My favorite series out of all of them. I loved it.
That was a good series. Good show.
Yeah, it almost smells of, instead of artists and writers, it smells of HR and bean counters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when you're in a big corporation and you reshuffle.
Yeah. What do we do to have to get the numbers?
Exactly. That's what it feels like when you start stripping characters of their stories and their history. It smells like an HR bean counter move. Dude, give the writers the money and the time, and give the artist the money and the time, and let them develop something new. And if it doesn't take off, well, there's your answer. So, all right, we've gone long. I'm going to have to do some editing.
Yeah.
I think we're in trouble. Hopefully we'll get canceled after this. That way we can have our weekends back.
Yeah, probably.
All right, everybody.
If we're going to get canceled, this is the episode.
This is the episode. Oh, you haven't looked at my notebook. Anyway, so thank you for joining us, and we will see you next episode. That's it. That's our show. Join us for our next full-length episode where Fighter Wizard and I will be discussing our favorite video game sequel. Please do us the favor and like, subscribe, share this podcast so we can get some traction. Still waiting on your reviews and comments. Once I get around to it, check us out on our socials. Combative Nerds on Patreon, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You know the deal. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you next episode.